There are movies that find us at the exact right times in our lives, and then become required viewing as your life goes on. In the fall of 1995, one day removed from my 13th birthday, this absolute gem of a movie quietly opened in theaters. Released amongst a sea of star-studded, well-marketed films, and a few years before the resurgence of the teen comedy, a small little film made with a budget of only $1.5 million debuted at number 8. This movie wasn't flashy. The trailer was pretty middle of the road. The cast were mostly unknowns at the time, and truth be told, this movie looked like it would be destined to be released and then fade away. For the most part, it kinda did. You rarely see it on best of lists, and despite this being James Van Der Beek's feature film debut, I can't recall ever hearing him talk about it as part of his origin story, even though he was incredible as bully Rick Sanford.
Then get something, alright? This is important, you understand? Understand?
He was so good in this role that I honestly did not buy him as nice guy Dawson Leary when Dawson's Creek premiered a few years later. The main character is ordinary, and that's what makes this movie so extraordinary. Angus is overweight, but he's also incredibly intelligent, a good football player, and a great friend. This movie hits upon that insecurity many teens get when one physical feature can become your defining trait, despite you being so much more. The message of normal, being a very arbitrary construct, was viewed as some as overly simplistic or saccharine, and was possibly the result of cynicism being a prevalent theme in many projects of the era. It was cool to shit on sincerity, and with so many of us coming of age and experiencing a world where we had to be tough or man up, kindness and self-acceptance were not trendy. It was the height of a new era of self-improvement without a real emphasis on self-acceptance. One of the central tenets that fueled Ted Lasso to the top of everyone's favorites was how it was the beginning of a new wave centered on kindness and understanding. This little movie and its message was, in essence, a large metaphor for its place in motion pictures of the time. It was an outlier that survived the barrage of what was popular at the time to survive and thrive. The plot is simple. Angus is a very smart kid who happens to be overweight that is trying to survive high school. He is pranked into being elected the Winter Ball King in an attempt to humiliate him in front of everyone.
And this year's Winter Ball King is...
Not Rick, not Rick, not Rick,
Angus Bethune?
All right!
Holy shit!
It's a plot that's been played out many times before, but the performances and music make this simple plot so much more than a few lines on the back of a video box could ever tell you. Charlie Talbert has this charm and presence about him that immediately draws you in. He's confident in aspects of himself on the inside, while being perpetually bombarded with messages that say he isn't normal. His shift between being so academically confident, yet so insecure socially, resonates throughout the screen and takes me back to my own high school days. The friendship he shares with Chris Owen's Troy feels genuine and showcases just how underrated a performer Chris Owen was at such a young age.
I had Troy, and he had...
I mean, this guy was a staple in so many flicks from the 90s, from his role as the Shermanator in the American Pie series, to literally stealing all the scenes he would walk through and Can't Hardly Wait. Chris Owen, to those of us growing up, was our Steve Buscemi, a character actor who took whatever size role he had and was just abnormally consistent and hilarious. While he can be described as the comic relief of the film, his humor feels appropriate to his age and only makes the moments where he's required to be more grounded that much more powerful. Ariana Richards plays Angus' crush Melissa Lefevre with a quiet charm and sweetness that leaves no question why Angus is in love with her.
I don't know what it is. I get the worst pain in my stomach whenever I see her.
You get a boner in your stomach?
And truly, the best thing about the young cast is that they actually feel and look like high schoolers because they were all actual high school age. You don't have to suspend belief when it's a dude in his mid-20s acting like a high school student. One of my favorite aspects of this movie was that it didn't fall into the lazy trope of making the parent figures dopey or ignorant, or in many cases, non-existent. Kathy Bates was a loving mom who worked hard, and she was very familiar with Angus's struggles in school. She didn't try to solve them for him, but she was just there for him, something all of us need sometimes.
You know what they did with his underwear? They ran it up the flagpole just to humiliate him. And he gets up and he goes back there every single day. So don't you tell me I don't know how strong my son is. I know.
George C. Scott as Angus's grandfather may be my favorite performance in the movie because he perfectly balanced being a father figure with life advice, but he wasn't without his own flaws. The chemistry between Charlie Talbot and George C. Scott feels genuine and lived in, and his subplot of marrying a younger woman seemed an odd choice at first, but as you see the parallel of his journey with his grandson, the payoff is so earned. He gives so much to his performance, and I truly believe this is what elevates it to the top of my list.
Superman is indestructible. And you can't be brave if you're indestructible. It's people like you and your mother. People who are different and can be crushed and know it. Yet they keep going on out there every time.
There's one undeniable fact about this movie, and that fact is that this movie has one of the best goddamn soundtracks of any movie I've ever seen. Look at this playlist. Weezer, Goo Goo Dolls, Ash, Green Day. Not only is this one of the greatest 90s mixtapes around, but it does something that only truly great soundtracks can do, and that is create a connection between the songs and the scenes they accompany. I can listen to any song and immediately recognize what scene the needle dropped for. The use of music isn't gratuitous, but carefully curated to punctuate each scene, as well as firmly rooting the film within its setting of a high school in the mid-90s. A close comparison would be the stellar work Zach Braff did supervising the music for Garden State. We all have that handful of movies that are just required viewing for us year after year. Angus is one of those movies for me. It came out just as I was moving into my teenage years and gave an insecure little guy some cinematic comfort in a time when my world was opening up to so many new unknowns. It's important to remember those movies that are within your core memories because it's always good to check in on the person you used to be, so you can maybe be a little more sure of the person you actually are and who you're turning into.
Angus, remember these words and always live by them. Screw them. Who cares what anybody thinks?